this didn't start like that. It was just a very spontaneous thing. They were in each other's homes. And as over the years, as new families joined, it caused a lot of problems because it wasn't clear what they were joining. They didn't necessarily have the same vision as the first founding families had. And a lot of energy went into convincing new families, for one thing, that we were working with integral education and not something else. We were not an eco school or a Montessori school or something else. We were working with integral education, and that was not going to change whatever parents were coming and going. But it became quite unstable for children also, because they would make new friends and then the parents would get shaky and scared and not understand what we were doing, and they would take their kids out. So it was quite many years of this very challenging times with the families not really daring to go there. And each year we're kind of thinking about, well, how do we communicate better what we're doing? How do we even understand what we're doing well enough to be able to communicate it to someone else? So first we have to, if we're not clear enough, there's obviously something we're doing wrong if we're not able to share properly what we're doing. And in a traditional system, you have things to show. You'll have the children's textbooks, and you'll have the whole, when they're producing things all the time. But when we're working on the process instead, there isn't that. You can't grasp it. It's not tangible in the same way what the children are doing every day. And this became very difficult to explain to children, that maybe one child just needs time and needs something completely different. And then we came to this research that a year and a half ago, we decided that we needed to really study what we were doing and to do like a more formal research for ourselves to understand what we're doing better, and then to be able to communicate this better to parents and to even to like SIRE and other bodies in Oroville that we always got a lot of criticism from. So that's the like kind of the research that we worked on, and that Lakshmi asked me if I could share a little bit about today. So that's, yeah. I don't know if you all want to share something before I tell.
Thanks, Maya.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've been having these conversations, and as you and I were talking, that you said, there's so much more depth into these three principles. And yeah, if anybody has any comment, yeah, go ahead, Martha.
Maya, I actually was one of your teachers back in your early days in Oroville.
Oh, really?
I remember when you and your family came, and
Really?
my name's Martha, and I had taught at Center School.
Oh, how nice.
And I remember we had a commonality in being familiar with you in Swedish and me in English with this little book, Miss Jaster's Garden. I don't know if you remember that, but I remember.
I don't, but wow.
That discovery that we knew that, and we were both familiar with that book because I had been reading it to my children. And I'm really very much interested in your project and how you're working to improve the education there, because I know that it has been rather unstructured for some time, and maybe structure is not the issue, but certainly a more focused way of providing education and education opportunities is so important. So thank you for appearing with us today.
Yeah, I know it's late for you, but anyway, we have to. And thanks for.
Oh no, this timing is fine. It's just 10:30, so it's not so late. Yeah.
I have a quick question. Could you, I'm really interested very much in hearing about what your observations and such were of your own practice and your own initiative. But prior to that, you had said you all started with the parents joining. Could you explain as to what was the intended goal of that? What were your initial thoughts in terms of when you started the program?
I was not part of the program when it started. I
Oh.
joined a few years later. But it was parents who felt that, you know, we can't offer the children an integral education unless we're working on ourselves. If we're not ready to work on ourselves, we actually have nothing to offer. And these parents, they wanted to see how could they work on themselves as parents and support each other in that, and to make that a more active, conscious process in their parenting, and to kind of build a community to support each other in that. So it's not that all the parents are facilitating the children, but it's to kind of build a community where parents are supporting each other in their parenting, and I'm feeling that this is a conscious choice to go into, and we're not dropping our children in school and education happens there, and then at home it's not the same. So they wanted to really see integral education as something that is life and not school, or yeah, that is why.
Yeah, I must say that it's the first time that I heard from someone who is speaking about integral education that there are more doubts and more questions than answers, which is a very, very good sign, I think, because I think my impression is that we still do not understand really what integral education is about, at least in the original version, as Mother and Sri Aurobindo were talking about, and also Mother put into practice as far as she could until a certain time. So I appreciate this very much, because I like this questioning. My impression is that nobody really, myself included, of course, that we really still understand what they were trying to convey us. There is something missing, something lacking in the practice. Perhaps in the theory, you know, it's easy. I had also this experience. In the theory, it's easy to understand, but when it comes to the practice, it's not that easy. But well, this was a comment aside. But my question is, you said you had also an experience with the Montessori schools, and in what sense would you characterize the difference between Montessori and the integral education as you understand it? Because I think there are many commonalities, but it's not clear where the real difference is. Did you develop some thoughts about that?
I think that in a lot of the big, like, the ideas are the same. It's child-centered, it's learning, it's the principles. The principles are the same. Nothing can be taught. The mind must be consulted in its own growth, and working from the near to the far. Those three principles are the same in Montessori. But and I think what Montessori did was that she spent so much time observing children and looking at how to implement these principles in quite a regular setup, and in a level of consciousness that we can relate to easily. And what I feel with integral education is that these three principles, I have been going very deeply into trying to understand them, what they mean, and there's so much that lies underneath these principles that are tools of how to implement. And I think that the principles are something that we are able to start to try to practice, to start to put into place in our school systems. While the other aspect, when we're thinking that we're no longer teaching content, which the whole educational system in the world is about teaching content, but we're actually developing our faculties of consciousness, which is something that cannot be taught. You cannot teach someone to develop their consciousness. So how can we, what kind of opportunities or situations will support a child or an individual to develop their faculties of consciousness, their thinking, their seeing, their hearing, their vital, their body, how to, and this is something that I think is, I can feel that it's a little bit still beyond my capacity to grasp completely what this is. I think that I can, at where I am, when I see that we can start to find practices that exist in the world where people have specialized in certain things, like maybe a specific techniques that people have developed that really develop faculty. And I think we need to start collecting these so that they're accessible to people who are interested in integral education. But I think we're so conditioned by teaching of content that this is how we look at education, that we're not really, I think it'll take a lot of time and a lot of research and a lot of collecting all practices like this that exist in the world and creating like a library or a place, a platform where people can find the things instead of everyone having to look for them. So that part of integral education, I think, will take a long time to even come close to what Mother and Sri Aurobindo would have envisioned, that I'm not able to really.
I can relate very much to this thing that we are very conditioned in teaching content. And I can absolutely relate to this because I myself, as a teacher, there was always this impulse to teach content, and it is difficult to get rid of this thing, especially as an adult who was always conditioned like that. Yes, that's absolutely true. By the way, did you know that Maria Montessori lived in Chennai for 3 years? She was in contact with
Kodaikanal.
So I didn't know that. I thought in Chennai, but you know she was also in contact with the ashram.
They were in correspondence when the mother was setting up the ashram kindergarten, and in that time Maria Montessori was in Kodaikanal, and she developed all her theories about the cosmic education during that time for the older children.
So I suspect that she was conditioned by the integral education, not the other way around. Probably.
No,
maybe.
I think that the integral education was quite inspired by her, actually.
Yeah.
I think both ways, probably both ways, but she had already come quite far in her practices. So I think it was like parallel things happening.
Okay. Did mother know her?
They were writing to each other. That's what I know. They corresponded by letters. I don't know if they met.
Thank you.
So, any other questions, or you want me to share about what we've been doing? Yeah. Okay. What?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Okay. So basically, the where we started was that we were spending all this. We were trying to develop this kind of different way of working with the children, and we just kept having to deal with adults on every level. And for me, I think also having been preparing myself for so many years outside of Oroville and then coming back to Oroville, like, okay, now I'm finally here, now I can really do it. Because for me, Oroville is a gift because it's probably one of the few places in the world where we're actually free to try to practice this in its full. Everywhere else, like when I was in Sweden, I could do what I could in my little classroom, but there was only so much I could do because of the structures in the country. And I see that so many schools in the world with all different approaches with integral education, with democratic education, even with Montessori, struggle because of this, that there's a limit to what you're able to do. We decided to do this research for 1 year, and somehow several things came together at the same time. A group of people who were interested in doing research. We got a woman, Alessandra, who's a filmmaker, and she has a background in education, and she offered to stay with us for a full year and be present every day in everything, because we felt we need to capture everything so we can actually see what we're doing and to be able to look back at what we're doing. So she offered to be there, and we had this research team, and then we decided to put certain things in place to support the research. One thing was that previously we've always been doing reflections with the children. When they plan their work, what they want to do, that they do individual reflections. But this year we decided that instead of the children writing their reflections, their mentor would actually take notes, and we had quite a structured weekly reflection with them that took maybe 15 minutes to half an hour with the child to really go deep and to support them in their learning journey. And then we were looking for how do we when learning is not tangible, when parents can't come to an open house and look at the notebooks and check the worksheets and things like that, what are we looking for? If we're not looking for that kind of learning, if they can answer all the questions on a test or something, what are we actually looking for? So that was a question. We're like, what are we looking for? What do we want to capture in this? And then we were talking, and we realized that there are these clear moments when you see something happening in a child. You see it. You see that there's like an aha moment, or you see that there's a deep struggle that the child overcomes and manages to do something else. And there are all these special moments that happen all the time. And when you don't take notice, you see that they happen, but at the end of the year, actually you don't really remember everything that's happened in the year. And over several years, you definitely you remember a few, but not all of these moments. So we decided to call these moments magic moments, whether they're struggles or not, and like that. And then we decided that we're going to capture all the magic moments. So each child has a mentor that they do the reflection with every week. And then they have quite a few different facilitators in all their different activities, like their sports activities or their art. And because we use Oroville as a campus, so they all have different schedules kind of that each child has put together for themselves. So all facilitators were involved, and we involved all parents. So every time, and we created a WhatsApp group, a magic moment WhatsApp group. So every time someone would observe a magic moment in the child, they would just write in the WhatsApp group magic moment and the name of the child, not describing what it was. And then the mentor of the child could contact that person, whether the parent or another facilitator, and ask what happened and make a note of what had happened. And then to reflect on this with the child on their weekly reflection, like not say that we saw that this and this happened, but bring up the situation and allow the child to express, to see, did this child also realize this magic moment, or was it only something that we observed from the outside? So at first parents were not so involved, but then some parents started to get really involved and also very curious if they would see their child's name, they actually wanted to know what had happened and what someone had seen. So we started collecting magic moments. We did the weekly reflections with the children and the mentor. And then we also started doing monthly reflections, deep reflections with all the facilitators in the same way, to see their process and what they were learning and what they were struggling with and like that. And then we tried to do with the parents. We didn't succeed in as many parent reflections as we wanted, but the idea would maybe be to have once a term, like three times in a school year, to have reflections with parents about their learning journey as parents, about their development, like that. And then we what did we do more? Then we started, we wanted to see how is the home life and the life that we saw in the school environment, how did these both impact the child, and could we see like if the child had slept well or not eaten well, or if they'd been fighting a lot at home or something like that, could we see that impact the child in some way? So we created a weekly barometer that we also had all children and parents and facilitators fill out, and it took maybe 2 minutes with very simple questions like, how did you sleep this week from 1 to 5? How was your appetite? How was your social things? How is it at home? And then we tried to see if is there something we could see, and I think with that we would need to do it for a bit longer time, but it was actually really good to do just as a reflection, to actually just stop and think, how was it? And then we could look at that, and then with children we could actually look back and see like, okay, but remember then you were not able to focus, and if we look at your sleeping, that was when you had such difficulty sleeping a few weeks back, and you had those issues with your friend. So that simple barometer was it didn't give us what we thought it would with like some compared lines and but it gave us something to help with the reflections. And so this we followed, and then we had Alessandra, who was there filming all the challenging moments and all the beautiful moments and all the in-between time where she was wondering, what am I doing here? What am I looking for? Is anything happening? And I think now she has about 400 or 500 hours of film material that she's been sitting and sorting. And she's making a film that is going to be ready in a few months with her journey as a filmmaker through this, and her kind of discovering integral education through this, where she was familiar in the beginning, but really understanding it at deeper level through this film. So that was kind of the research that we did. And then obviously what it also brought was that before we always wanted to have meetings where we would talk about education and talk more about what we were doing, but somehow logistics would always take over, and we would sit and we would talk about all the practical things, and then we would say that we need to talk more about what we're doing, and let's do it next meeting, and then somehow it would always be pushed to the last meeting, and then we would have half an hour only. And actually calling this research and saying that we're doing a research made us put a lot of time. So we would spend many hours each week on meetings that we would call research meetings. And even if we would just sit and just talk about this, the insights and the understanding we would get through all these conversations through the whole year was really, we learned so much. And because each one kind of has a different experience and a different understanding, and taking the time to hear each other and share that was really great. And then at the end of and also because somehow we wanted this, we had a feeling that often when we do things, they just go on and on and on, and we don't really finish things, and then they kind of fizzle out and we don't do anything. So then I decided that I was going to do a course at the university, and actually do a bachelor thesis, and in Sweden online, and use that as a tool to help us keep a pace and to actually have something that was finished at the end of the school year, because with the end of the term. So that was that kind of helped us to structure it, like now we need to look at this part, and now we need to discuss this, and now we need to do that, and then it have to be finished. So it was very helpful during the whole process, but in the final, like in the discussion, in the end of when we were coming to the end, it was like, that was when we were like, wow, we were discovering all these things, and there was no time. It was just like, okay, paper has to be handed in a few days, just finish it and hand it in. So in the research paper, it's like the discussion in the end is like a whole new world that opened up to us kind of in our own discoveries. And we're working on that now to see how to document or like put together that part, which is a lot about the three principles and understanding them really at a, I feel that, I think what I discovered is that these three principles, they're often written like, oh, nothing can be taught, we don't teach the kids, we're not here to teach, or the mind must be consulted in its own growth. Oh, the kids are allowed to work at their own pace, and working from the near to the far. Yeah, we work with things like close by, when we work from what is closer to them and expand out. But what we discovered somehow is that these three principles, I don't know, I see it a little bit like a magical hidden key, you know, when you don't give out all the information, but it's, if you start to look, it's hidden just underneath. And so what we discovered there is like nothing can be taught. Like you're welcome to stop me anytime. Huh? Stop me anytime you want, and if anything is unclear or you want to ask something or whatever. If we compare with like a seed of a tree, in that seed is already everything that is needed for the tree to grow. You don't need to teach the seed anything. It knows everything how to become a tree. And we have taken that away from children by saying that the seed is empty and we have to put everything inside. But the child, just like the tree has a seed that is full, everything in nature is like that. And the human seed is the same. And inside the human seed, there are things, there are capacities for development like imagination, curiosity, a questioning mind, consciousness. We have all these stages of development. A child goes through stages of development that leads them forward. These are all things that are inside the human seed. And because all this is there, we don't need teaching. So it's not about the teacher, we're not teaching in the classroom. It's about seeing we have the seed. And how can we nurture all these capacities that are inside the seed? That's what education is. If nothing can be taught, means how can we nurture the child's imagination? How can we nurture the child's curiosity? How can we nurture all these natural things that are inside so that the child can develop to their full potential, not for some future full potential, getting an exam or doing something, but today, where the child is right now in their growth, in their little sprout of the seedling, how can we nurture this seedling to reach the full potential today? And if we can try to do that the best we can every day, then we believe that the child can reach their full potential in their life, in their unending education later on. So somehow that is like the, you know, and if you start to look into that, if you start to try to understand imagination, if you try to understand curiosity, if you start to try to understand aha moments and all these things, that is trying to go deeper into understanding what nothing can be taught means. It's not just being the teacher in the classroom who is not teaching but helping. So then with the second principle, if we're looking at, so the first principle is very much about how do I develop myself? No, if how do I develop myself to my full potential? How do I develop my consciousness? How do I develop my whole being? This is integral yoga. This is the process of integral yoga. How do I, through my human development, through my life, from childhood through my life, how do I develop myself to my full potential during this? The second principle working from the near to the far. No, sorry, nothing. The mind must be consulted in its own growth. So if we're looking at how, let's see how to formulate it. In the world today, we have all these problems. We have people fighting, we have competition, we have wars. Everyone is like pulling at their egos and wanting this is like the big problem of humanity. And the school system is trying to make everyone the same. No, it's like you put children in all at the same age and feed them through the system so that they'll all come out the same, and then they'll all have the same skills. And we're trying to, with the educational system of today, we're trying to create comparison, competition, ambition, like who you have to be the, and in the whole system today, there's like a hierarchy. You can be the teacher, or you can be the head teacher, or you can be this, like this, all these different rankings to create kind of a competitive, you can get stars and you're the top student, or you have grades, and it's like everything is built on this. And if we want a world where people instead learn how to collaborate, how to care for each other, how to value everyone's differences, how to see that we don't all have to be the same. We can all, each one can be different, and that is something that is beautiful and helpful, and that is what the world needs. And how do we create an educational system where we nurture these things that will bring this to humanity, collaboration, and to yeah. So this comes through the mind is consulted in its own growth. Because if we create a system of education where each one is allowed to be different, each one is supported in their strengths, and from the beginning, children see that this is something positive, and they don't see differences as something negative. Like we have to have mixed ages, not to sort children by age anymore. That's completely unnatural to sort children by age. To have mixed ages where older and younger can interact and learn from each other. That brings so much care, and to have different cultures and different ages and everything mixed, and that someone can be good at music and someone else can be good at writing and someone else can be good at, and and that's really the what is so beautiful with an education. And if the mind is consulted in its own growth, children grow up seeing this, and each one is allowed to make these choices for themselves throughout their growth, and to see what suits them, and you build this. So this principle, the second principle for me, is about unity and diversity. It's how do we build unity and diversity is allowed to leave all the seedlings, all the seeds sprout, and each one grow in whatever way, and allow all the seedlings to grow differently and all the trees to become different trees, and that makes a beautiful forest. And so this is the second principle. And the third principle, working from the near to the far, that is for me a like you can't work on the third principle without working on the first two principles. Because by the process of integral yoga, nothing can be taught. It's the individual growth. And through the second principle, we are all growing together. We're caring for each other. And through these two, we see that working from the near to the far is really putting these two first principles into practice. So how do we now make it happen with the children, and for ourselves throughout our lives? So it's doing this through real life. what situations can we use the first and the second principles to practice this through, what examples could I give? It's like this, it's like, I think it's Sri Aurobindo who describes it as a threefold process. It's like we're in a constant thing of taking up new information, new experiences, and then we're trying to integrate them and add them to what we already know and understand. And then there's a synthesis, and we've reached a new level in our consciousness from those experiences. And this is a process that's constantly going on in us, this threefold process. And this is, if we, through the first and second principle, we develop the skills to be able to be active participants in this threefold process, so that this is not an unconscious thing that happens, but actually a conscious process that we are, that children develop the capacity to be a part of. This is what can take us to unending education, because unending education is not the same thing as lifelong learning. I think it's often confused with lifelong learning. Lifelong learning is what they talk about, like you need to be able to change jobs and be flexible and learn new things and things like this. This is what they, with this, there's a lot of talk about lifelong learning today in education in general in the world. But unending education is something completely different, because it's this deepening of our consciousness. So it's how to become an active part of that by what we are developing in the first and second principle. Does it make any sense? So the third one, from the near to the far, is the ongoing journey of an unending education and being a part of this unfolding of oneself. That's kind of where we're at in our discussions and in our practices, and it's just a beginning, but it's like some sparks that we have that have inspired us in our practices. So
thanks for sharing, Maya. Because even for me, I'm not an educator, but as you know, volunteering and observing myself and my own children, there's a lot of research, but I think the practice, and I think now we're at a stage to practice and integrate different researches together. Anybody? I know, Malti, you're working currently. Okay, go ahead, Andrea.
I was fascinated by the entire description. Thank you so much. It seems to me that the key piece of this is the use of the mentors. That if you get the scale right, if you get the right number of kids in a group, so the mentor can pay attention to each one, that's the piece where you can make all these principles really active. To say, if you're going to consult the mind and make sure that your musician recognizes that's fine, and the scientist recognizes that's fine. You can't get there until you get the mentor. And I like the layering of the mentors talking to the kids, facilitators or the mentors talking, and then getting the parents in the habit as well. So double plus good, really nice. Thank you.
You know what we noticed with that was that the children quickly saw how helpful it was, and how they could understand patterns in themselves, and they could start to recognize their own development, and they could see when they have overcome certain challenges that they had, that, oh wow, then we can look back and you can actually read about it. So it's really, the kids really look forward to these reflections, and they really like them. And it's also a chance that they can just sit and just share everything that's happening in their lives. And that someone also just takes the time to sit and listen and see that everything is important and a part of where they're at.
Agreed.
Maya, like Miss Andrea said, I was too extremely fascinated in the way you described integral education. Lakshmi and I have had several conversations And I would always ask her, I still don't understand what integral education is, even though I have read, I have had several conversations. And I would say that the way you explained it alongside the three principles really sunk in for me. You know, a little bit, I wouldn't say sunk in. I mean, I have a better sense of what integral education is now. But as you were talking and describing, the thought that kept going through my mind is, how do we even begin to think of infusing this in the very structure of public education in United States that is, even just introducing social emotional learning, which is a little bit of a structured curriculum, we are struggling. Getting teachers to understand and infuse that within their curriculum. And so my biggest questions are around, how do you observe a child when the structure, it's observe a child for what is it that their interests are, what they are innately driven to, when we as a society and as an institution have structured them and kind of already taken that away from them, be it in the way the home lives are structured, be it in the way the schools are structured. So I'm trying to see as to, how would one, if I were to go to my school and say, let's have a conversation about how to introduce this, even in the slightest, smallest possible way, how would we do that?
I think there are things like reflections that you can do. I think you can, like when you're in a system like that, you can't get away from the content of what you have to be working with. So that's I think you can be creative as a teacher, and you can try to find different ways of doing it. But I think to start to bring awareness to other things, like through the reflections, I feel also like the thing with magic moments, to just, when you see these special things, note them down, share them with parents, share them with the child, and see that everything is not only about these things that we're doing, there's also this that we're doing. And I think to start talking more and more about that, and about allowing everyone to be different, not I think to try to work in whatever way possible, to start to work away from all the comparisons and the judgment that is on a child that is not succeeding in something, to somehow build an acceptance for differences as much as possible in the setting that you have. And I think especially judgment, because judgment comes it becomes our own judgment of a child, that, oh, they're not reaching these grades, something is wrong with this child because they're not there. And to kind of try to get the child to understand, now that this is the system that we're in, and these are the goals that are set up here. But I can understand that you have all these other strengths, and this is like to not have the child feel that they are kind of doomed because they're not successful in one area, or because they maybe don't even have a space for their passions to be expressed in that setting. Not to so I think that as much as possible to leave our judgment that they don't, of the children, and that, like, our own, because when we're in that conditioned system, like I noticed when I was working in Sweden and I had to set grades and things like this, I got into it myself, because you have to be judging them in a certain way, but how to So I think to work on that in like ourselves as facilitators, how we can be less judgmental towards the children, in regards to the goals that the system has set up.
Thank you.
Even here, there's a lot of research in different schools, like instead of detention, making them do activities and all that. But I don't know how much mainstream it is in a lot of schools, and it depends on the teacher or the administrator.
Yeah.
And I know, Malti, you work with a lot of principals in different schools.
I would just wanted to comment, Maya, on how I think you make such a very good point about the attitude of the teacher, the mentor, in that context, because that has a tremendous influence. Not only principally it all derives from the consciousness of the teacher, really, but the sensitivity to the children and the awareness of the non-judgmental attitude and openness to the true nature of the children. All that is very much originates from the teacher, him or herself, and it becomes the basis of the whole atmosphere in the classroom and the freedom that the children experience to express themselves, and experiential component of integral education is certainly so important. So for self-expression and for discovering their nature and what direction they really need to go in life. So I think you make a very good point there. And I really appreciate your presentation. It's so nice. Thank you.
Thank you. Is the pouring monsoon disturbing you? Should I move somewhere else?
No,
It's like pouring down outside.
I don't hear almost nothing.
No, it's the monsoon that'll never stop this year. It's like just going on and on and on.
So Martha, it's nice to see your student flourish now. Yeah,
Hi,
and,
Julia.
Very nice.
Hi, Julian.
Yes, my apologies. There's a little too much going on, but I look forward to seeing the video recording. I
yeah,
hope please share it with me. And I'm grateful that Matthew from ABI USA board was able to experience a little bit working and having his daughter use the materials in Oroville. So I have good reports.
yeah.
That's good.
Yeah, there's a question to Andrea and Malti. I mean, these are all good in theory, and I know even in this country and throughout the world, there has been a lot of research on child-centered education, social, different components of what Maya expressed. But what is the gap between the implementing, or how can we start even, writing about this, creating this awareness?
Well, I was thinking back to the original experience you had trying to get people to start a school, and how you churn out all these papers and all these positions and guidelines and whatever. And what I was going to ask is, how did that emerge from the conversations? Who were you having conversations with? How did that level of communication begin before you had a set of principles or a manifesto of some sort? I'm thinking about my own experience way early when I was a baby teacher in a middle school, where we decided to start something different from junior high. And it was 6 people sitting around a table, drinking coffee or beer or whatever we had, and just sorting through what we wanted to see happen and what we believed, and then trying to figure out who we could lure into the cabal of plotters and planners that we were. It worked for a while. It actually went on for 3 or 4 years, and then people went away. But I was just wondering where that conversation started for you.
I think it's from kind of assuming that everyone who's come to Oroville is there for the same reason, and everyone should be sold on this kind of education, and everyone should want this for their kids because they have chosen it for themselves as joining. So I think there were a lot of assumptions like that, and so like from the first group who started the learning community, who had all these things clear in their, because they had been working for so long, and then all the other people who joined, maybe the coming 3 years or something after, 3-4 years after it started, there was this assumption that everyone is joining for the same reason, and then it became very clear that it was not. And people had all kinds of expectations and things. And also where towards, for example, Sire, who is the channel who channels in money from the Indian government to the schools, it was also not clear what it was. Is it some parents doing something in the forest with the kids? So there was a lot of talk in the beginning, like it's a bunch of kids climbing trees in the forest. That was like the stamp that we had. And then we had some very challenging years where we had some meetings, some very challenging meetings where parents were really questioning, like, who are you to decide that we're doing integral education here? And at that point, actually, some of the founders left. They couldn't take more time sitting in these kind of conversations about the philosophy and how to implement it. None of us know. We're all discovering. So there can be 1,000 ways of implementing integral education. But to even be questioning if this is what we should be doing or not in Oroville or trying to do. So out of that, kind of, we started fumbling to see how we could put some systems in practice. So it was really like, and first we did something that was like, because we had faced such challenges, we wanted to be overly clear with what we were doing. And then we put together a whole book for parents to read, and reflection questions, and like to make sure that they really understood that this is what, but then it became too like philosophical, and we wanted actually to share what we were doing, and then not to have parents join thinking that it's like the same when I think yes, this is an important thing, that when people come to Oroville, they expect that they are arriving in a utopia, that people in Oroville are all functioning in this, are these enlightened beings who are able to you know, people in Oroville are just the same people as everywhere else. They've just chosen to move there. There's no different. So, but there is this feeling that it's these people who have come there somehow have these other capacities, and then there is all these conflicts going on, and that's the reality, that one has to develop ourselves. We have to go through all these struggles. We have to face all these things in ourselves to be able to grow and to develop our consciousness and see what our challenges are with our egos and our things. And that's what Oroville is kind of churning all the time. And the same way that when you come with your child to a traditional school, you know what you get. You could put up a school anywhere in the world and it's the same. You know, there are walls, there are desks, there's a teacher, there's a curriculum, it's being taught, the children will be fed out, they'll know the content, we can give them an exam at the end, they'll have their diploma, and it's like, there's no question. It's like people expect a product. So the biggest challenge that we have in TLC is that people come and they expect that we are ready. We are providing something that is ready, and that and they don't understand that that it's about themselves as parents, how they are able to go into this in their parenting, how they are going to be able to work in a community, and they don't understand that for the child to be taken, many children that we have come from either an unschooling background or from a traditional system. And for these children to adapt they don't just come in and then from one day to the next, they're fully able to drive themselves and reflect and know what they want. And it's something that takes a long time for a child to just find some quiet and to connect with themselves. And sometimes they have to go through challenges like boredom or starting and finishing things and not knowing what they want. And there are all these things, and you can't jump past those because the child needs to be able to go through those to find themselves beyond that. And this part parents can't understand. Most parents can't understand this, so they get very frustrated in this kind of gap from being able to know right away that this week my child has had these classes and this is the content. So we and this is like our biggest struggle: how to convince, how to get parents to understand this, and how to get and to trust in the child, that if we just allow the child to be and listen to the child and really get there, the child will get it. There's no doubt that the child will find their way if we're all just trying to nurture the child in the best way we can. It can't go wrong. But as soon as we have doubt and we start pulling back, and then adults start questioning each other, and then it's like, it's a mess.
It's interesting that, that parents seem to forget what it was like to watch their infant become 5, because that's as organic as it gets. Even if you say my baby can read at 3, it's like they've already had that experience, but they just can't translate it into the next 5 years.
Yeah.
So
you're not going to tell a parent of a 6-month-old that, you know, the parent is not going to tell the child that now you have to start walking. or say, no, sorry, we're not walking at 1, you have to wait until you're 2. It's like, no, it's the child is telling clearly that right today is the time when I need to be walking.
So Lakshmi, the fundamental answer to what you asked, which I thought was really good, and I'm going to shut up so somebody else can talk. You can't have a setting like this unless you begin with being able to question the assumptions you have about what education is. You know, that's the level at which you begin. You know, there's all the rest of the stuff can come organically, but unless you have the ability to say, we don't need to do it that way, there's a better way, another way, I don't think there's any progress. So that is all for right now. I'll shut up. Someone else can talk.
Like we always say, I know there's no one way, but the fundamentals and principles.
And we don't know the way.
Yes.
We don't know the way. We have to discover it.
What surprises me is also that you said that parents are not ready to experiment with their children. This is very dangerous because I had a personal experience with that. I tried to explain this to some parents, and they immediately said, my children are not animals for a laboratory where you make experiments. Yeah. And so they shut down everything, and that was okay. That's what I recognize, that to say this so directly is a wrong move. But at the end of the story, it seems to me that we cannot avoid that because we ourselves don't know really exactly what this integral education is about and how especially how it has to be practiced. And so a little bit of experiment is unavoidable, or how do you think?
Yeah.
Do you think so?
But I think what is needed, you know, when Mother says that, I think Mother has said in places that teachers don't need to be trained and parents shouldn't be involved. And there are places where she has said things like this. And I think it's important to see the difference between where we are now, presently, and what is needed now, and where this philosophy can take us in maybe not our generation, but if we deepen in integral education, maybe I can see with my daughter who's been through this system from birth, what her capacity is now. And if she can give that to her children, and maybe we're implementing with my great-grandchildren or something, we will be able to have that consciousness to be able to implement this kind of education. And I think that it can be dangerous to take quotes from the mother and make those quotes block us where we are today, instead of seeing them that they are somewhere where we would like to reach, but instead look at what is needed here and now. And I think in the present, we need teachers who are interested in learning. And whether they have a formal education before because they were already curious in education and wanted to pursue that, or if they're just individuals who are wanting to learn about education, even though they don't have that background before, that I think that is essential. So if there's not that, it cannot, in working with integral education, it cannot just be a classroom job. It cannot. It needs this wish to learn, to discover, to question, and to be in this process. And I think for me, it's been very helpful because I've been working with people who are also just trying to question this all the time. And then we have our conversations about it, which kind of pushes it forward even before this research year where we really were able to help each other do it more. So I think that is needed. And I think that parent education is essential, because if parents are not on board with this, it doesn't work. And we can see that with families that we have where the approach of parenting is, even if they have come to Oroville for their own thing, the child is put in front of the iPad the whole time to keep them busy. Parents have no patience, are not interested in listening to their children. Like, you see things like this, and then it doesn't work. So then we have to see how can we work with these parents to start to make them curious, to connect more to their child, to make them more aware of their role as a parent in the education of the child. And maybe in the future, when we are all so evolved in our consciousness, then parents won't need the support because they will already be there. And then parents don't need to be a close part of the education because they will be that naturally. But today, neither facilitators nor parents are there. So we all need to work on this. And if we don't, yeah, so I think that's we can't, because then, yeah, we can't take these quotes and just block it, because then they stop our evolution and we block ourselves from actually doing the work that we're supposed to be doing. So, yeah.
Thank you, Maya. Very clear explanation. Yes, thank you.
Maya, yeah, I think that's what David did, if I remember. I think he started this with classes for the parents. He did presentations, or he did some courses for the parents.
Nice.
I know it's a beginning of a long discussion and not only discussion, but awareness and work for ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not easy. I mean, for you also being a small community, you have more mentors, but I think public or independent schools here, having that ratio to student teacher or student mentor ratio and to the parents also, it's challenging.
Yeah, I think maybe it's not possible to do it with parents or with facilitators unless you in your team kind of decide that let's have one day where we like do a reflection with each other. You know, if you have your teacher meeting and you sit 2 and 2 and just take half an hour to do reflections or something like that. But for the children, I think it is possible to do it if you make it a priority. And I think what we've seen is that this has to have a huge priority. And then we need to organize so that this is not something that we were just doing for the research now. This is something that's become like the core part of the work that we do with the kids, because we can't do without it now. And I think that if you decide that this is really important, then I think you will make it happen. And then you see how you you could do spread out children during the week. You don't have to do all the same day. Or you could, if you are maybe some classes maybe has a teacher and an assistant teacher or something, then you could do half, or get the children to reflect each other. If you don't have the time to do it, get them to sit 2 and 2 and to ask each other and to note down. Or so I think there are lots of creative ways to do deeper reflections. And I think that each place can find a way if you prioritize it.
Andrea, you used to do right reflection with the kids.
Yeah. It's a good way to start a class. You know, you say, now it's time to just center ourselves, put ourselves in the right mental place. It is within the English teaching profession, using journals is a way of using the idea of reflection to sort of track the different places kids have been in their understanding of what's going on inside them. It's actually pretty common. I think the issue is not just the priority, but the entanglement, if you will, of facilitators, mentors, teachers, and the kids with each other. I think that particular permutation makes a lot of sense because it allows the kids to make that a priority for themselves if they know that's going to be part of what they do. So
what we have done is we've involved people who are not main facilitators to come in just to do reflection.
Mhm.
So they're like only mentor, they only come in for that. So then we can make use of facilitators who are not fully involved, and then we can have fewer children. So then we have maybe 5 to 7 children each, not more.
I can see another advantage to that too. If it's the teacher who is doing the reflection, there's always the potential for judgment. No matter how you position yourself as a teacher, the kid knows there's going to be a moment where a teacher's going to have something to say. But if it's a mentor, no judgment. It's just the relationship. So I can see how that would really be an advantage.
I know it's, anybody has anything before we close?
Thank you so much, Maya. It was very beautiful what we heard. Everything just, I really like the idea of collaboration and teaching the children to, to collaborate rather than compete with each other to a better world. And I think I can't wait to see the movie. It's a beautiful thing that you did. Thank you.
Yeah, we made a small short, actually we got it today, a surprise. I didn't know that it was being made. We got a little 18-minute preview of what is to come. So maybe if I get permission, I can send that to you.
That'd be wonderful.
Great.
Wonderful. That'd be great.
It would be nice to have a newsletter or something when the film is out to be noticed of this. How can we organize this eventually?
We're looking at, we have to see how we can organize it, but what we want to do is actually to make an exhibition in Oroville. There is an exhibition hall here that we
but as an
and
from
there
the outside.
maybe we can put together what we will show in the exhibition into some kind of something that we could share, because there we kind of want to grasp the essence of the research and then to create more sharing on education. So we've been thinking, how can we share what we're doing? I mean, this is just one way of doing things. This is just to share what we have done, what we have seen. And because there's no platform of sharing in Oroville, I think we thought, how can we make an exhibition, and then we maybe do a film screening of this film that we've made, and then whoever is interested and curious can come and we can share more. But I think like it'd be good if we put together something that we could send like to you also to share it in a more simple form.
Yeah, because I think even here there's alternative education and child-centered education, conferences or groups. So slowly more collaboration would kind of bring about progressive education.
Yeah.
Thank you all. I know it's late lunchtime. Lunchtime for all of you.
Lunchtime. Well, thank you all. I'm so curious to hear now. I've been just talking and talking. I'm so curious to hear about all of you and what you're doing, and I have to join next time, and then I'll be quiet.
Come back next time.
Yeah, then I won't say a word. I'll only ask questions.
No.
Or maybe we can share how we evolved in this 2 weeks, or how we made our own observations.
Let me a bit more than 2 weeks, Lakshmi, please. 2 weeks is not much to evolve.
No, I know.
Oh, that's so funny.
Oh.
I mean, we'll be meeting third Wednesday, so we'll see what comes. And then
It's just a check-in, Marco. You're not supposed to be done yet. That was the delightful piece about teaching high school. They weren't
Yeah, but
done.
you know, sometimes when someone also devolves, sometimes it's an up and down. So I don't want to to make this
of course, but that is also
public.
no, but that is also part of reflection, right? That Maya talked about for all of us.
Just try to reach your full potential each day from where you're at and see what that is.
Well,
See where you're at in 2 weeks.
So I don't know what
look
happened.
forward to next time.
Yep.
Congress.
We'll see you all.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much.
Nice.
Thanks,
And
Sasha.
Marta, so nice to see you. That was nice to know that we met before.
Thank you. Lovely to see you.
Yeah. Okay.
Wonderful.
Nice to see you
Thank
all.
you. Good night.
Bye.
Bye. Good night. Bye.